I pretended to be paralyzed so my son would take care of me, and I discovered my husband left me a $5.8 million fortune. Sometimes the most painful lies are the ones we tell ourselves, that we still matter. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for a single second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening my soul. My name is Eleanor Miller. I'm 64 years old, and I live in Austin, in an old craftsman bungalow that smells of cinnamon and loneliness. Every morning I wake up at 5:30, not because I have anything important to do, but because insomnia has become my only faithful companion. I put on the same blue cotton robe Henry gave me 10 years ago, back when he still pretended he saw me as a woman and not the shadow that took care of his home. The kitchen is where I spend most of my time. Preparing breakfasts no one will ever come to eat. Homemade biscuits that grow cold on the cooling rack. Drip coffee that turns bitter while I wait for a call that never comes. Pancakes for one person who has already lost her appetite for life. The smell of bacon and coffee mixes with the aroma of sadness, that invisible fragrance that permeates the houses where only the forgotten live. My routine has been the same for 3 years, ever since Henry died of a massive heart attack at his accounting office. A routine of emotional survival that can be summed up in one word: waiting. Waiting for Lucas, my only son, to call. Waiting for my grandchildren to ask me how I am. Waiting for someone, anyone, to notice I'm still breathing. Wednesdays were different, or so I thought. On that day, Lucas would stop by the house after work, not to visit me, but to pick up the spiced peach preserves I made especially for him. The same ones his father adored and which took me 2 full days to make. Peeling the fruit, cooking it slowly with brown sugar and spices, sterilizing the jars, labeling them in my shaky handwriting. For Lucas, with love from Mom, I always wrote, as if those words could buy me 5 more minutes of his time. But this Wednesday was different. The phone rang at 3 in the afternoon, just as I was finishing polishing the glass jars that shone like little golden suns on the kitchen table. "Mom, I'm not going to be able to stop by today. Jessica organized a dinner with her friends, and I need to help her get the house ready. Just leave the jars there. I'll grab them another day." His voice sounded distant, as if he were speaking to me from another planet. It wasn't just the distance of the phone. It was the distance of a heart that no longer finds room for a mother who has become invisible. "But Lucas, they're all ready, and you know the peaches will spoil if you don't refrigerate them soon. Mom, please, don't be so dramatic. It's just preserves. The world isn't going to end over a few jars of peaches." The tone. That tone he used when I was a problem to be solved, an obligation to be postponed. The same tone his father used when I asked him to spend a Sunday helping me in the garden, or when I suggested we go to church once in a while. He hung up without saying goodbye. The phone buzzed in my ear like an angry bee, but the real buzzing was in my chest, where something snapped with a dry sound, like an old branch that can no longer bear any more weight. I sat in the wicker rocking chair on the porch, the same one where Henry read the newspaper every morning while I served him his coffee with 3 spoonfuls of sugar. From there, I could see the garden that was once my pride, the bougainvillea that climbed the brick wall, the pots of geraniums I cared for as if they were my children, the small fountain Henry installed for our 20th wedding anniversary. Everything looked neglected now. The plants grew wild. The flowers withered without anyone noticing, just like me. In my lap, I had a shoebox filled with photographs that I went through every afternoon, like someone praying a rosary of memories. Photos of Lucas as a baby, chubby and smiling, with those cheeks I used to kiss until he giggled. Photos of our Sunday walks in Zilker Park, when he would run between the trees and I would follow with a basket full of fried chicken sandwiches and sweet tea. Photos of his graduations, where I always appeared in the background, proud but never the protagonist. And at the bottom of the box, the photograph that caused me the most pain, Lucas at 15, hugging me after I gave him the guitar he wanted so badly. His eyes shone with genuine happiness, and his hug lasted more than 10 seconds. "You're the best mom in the world," he had told me then. When did everything change? When did my love become a burden? When did my calls become interruptions, and my gifts become objects that just took up space? That night, as I put the jars of preserves in the refrigerator, I saw my reflection in the stainless steel door. A woman with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun, with wrinkles that told stories no one wanted to hear, with eyes that had cried so much they no longer knew how to produce tears. I was wearing the same floral dress I saved for special occasions because I thought Lucas's visit was worth looking pretty for. I touched my cheek and whispered, "When did I become invisible?" The silence of the house answered me with the echo of my own footsteps on the hand-painted ceramic tiles Henry and I had chosen together when we were newlyweds. 40 years of marriage reduced to memories that fade like the smoke from the candles I light each night to accompany my solitary dinner. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks that had formed over time, like the cracks in my heart that grew deeper with every slight, every unanswered call, every excuse not to come see me. And it was then, in the darkness of that early morning, that the idea began to sprout in my mind like a seed planted in the fertile ground of desperation. What if they actually needed me? What if I couldn't take care of myself? Would they remember I exist then? The memories came like in relentless avalanche. I remembered the sleepless nights when Lucas had a fever as a child. Me sitting beside him in the wooden rocking chair, singing him the songs my mother had taught me. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird." His small hands would grip my finger with that desperate strength of someone who needs to know they're not alone in the world. I remembered when he turned 5 and wanted a Spider-Man-themed party. Henry had said it was too expensive to hire an entertainer, but I sold my engagement ring, the one that had belonged to his grandmother, to pay for it all. I never told him. When Lucas saw the Spider-Man impersonator walk in, he screamed with excitement and hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would break. "You're magic, Mommy." I worked for the Hendersons for 10 years, cleaning their mansion in Westlake Hills to pay for Lucas's guitar lessons. I'd come home with my hands raw from cleaning chemicals, my back aching from mopping marble floors. But I'd sit and listen to him play, and it was all worth it. "One day I'm going to be famous and buy you a bigger house," he'd tell me, his eyes shining with innocence. When he married Jessica, I paid for half the wedding with my life savings. Money I had saved dollar by dollar, waking up at dawn to bake pies to sell at the local farmer's market. Henry never knew about that money. It was my secret, my gift for my son's future. 3 years of saving coins and an old Folgers coffee can I hid behind the canned goods. "It's the least I can do for my baby," I told Jessica when I handed her the envelope with the cash. She didn't even thank me. She just said, "Well, we had already budgeted for this anyway," as if it were my obligation, not my sacrifice. When the twins, Daniel and Sophia, were born, I was the one who got up in the middle of the night to help. Jessica worked as a designer and needed her sleep. For 6 months, I took the 5 a.m. bus to get to their house before the children woke up. I'd make them breakfast, bathe them, take them to preschool, pick them up, feed them, and put them to bed. "Could you stay on weekends too, Mom?" Lucas asked me one Friday. "Jessica and I need some time as a couple," and I said yes, as always. Because mothers of our generation learned early on that our value is measured in how much we give, not how much we receive. But when Henry died, everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't useful anymore. The grandchildren were 9 and didn't need me to look after them. Lucas had gotten a promotion at the construction firm where he worked, and they could afford a nanny to help around the house. I became unnecessary, an old piece of furniture taking up space. "Mom, you don't need to come over so often anymore," Jessica told me one day, while I was washing their dinner dishes. "The kids are very busy with swim lessons and tutoring, and Lucas gets home really late from work." That was the first time I felt the bitter taste of rejection. It wasn't violent, it wasn't cruel, it was worse. It was indifferent. Like when you push away a plate you no longer fancy without malice, just with the disinterest of someone who no longer finds flavor in what they once loved. I stopped going so often. Once a week became once every 2 weeks, then once a month, then only on birthdays and major holidays. And now I had to schedule an appointment to see my own grandchildren. The last time I went to their house unannounced, Jessica opened the door in a robe, with a green facial mask on. "Oh, Eleanor, I'm so sorry, but I really can't see you right now. I have a video call in 10 minutes. It wasn't for her job. It was an online yoga class." I heard her say, "Hey ladies, sorry for the delay. I had an unexpected guest. An unexpected guest. That's what they call grandmothers now. I stood there in the doorway, holding a container with a homemade lasagna I had made especially for them. I knew it was Lucas's favorite. It had taken me all day to prepare, making the sauce from scratch, the bechamel, layering the pasta, grating the cheese. "Don't you want it?" I asked. "Oh, yes, of course. Just leave it there on the counter. I'll try it later." I left it on the black granite countertop, next to a fruit bowl filled with imported apples that looked perfect but had no taste. I went home knowing my lasagna would end up in the trash can, because Jessica was always on a diet and Lucas no longer ate what his mother cooked. That night, lying in my lonely bed, I wondered if they had ever stopped to think about how much I had given for them, if they had ever added up the sleepless nights, the money spent, the tears of joy when I saw them happy, if they knew that for years, my only reason for getting up was to make sure they had everything they needed. But maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I gave so much that they got used to receiving without being grateful. Maybe I spoiled them by loving them too much. Maybe I made my love so common, so everyday, that it lost its value. And now, at 64, I found myself measuring my life in spoonfuls of loneliness, wondering if there was any way to get back even a little bit of that love I had given away so freely for decades. What if I stopped being available? What if, for once, I was the one who needed them? The next morning dawned gray, as if even the sky had decided to join my melancholy. As I was making my coffee, I heard the rumble of the garbage truck making its rounds. I peeked through the window and saw Mrs. Gable, my neighbor across the street, lovingly waving goodbye to her daughter who came to visit her every Saturday without fail. "Take care, honey, and give the kids a kiss from me," Mrs. Gable shouted from her door, waving her wrinkled hand as her daughter got into her car. How easy it all looked from the outside. How natural love seemed when it was reciprocated. I went back to my kitchen and sat at the table where the jars of peach preserves rested, right where I had left them yesterday like golden tombs of my shattered hopes. I touched them one by one, feeling their smooth, cold surface. All that work, all that love turned to syrup, for nothing. It was then that I remembered something I had stored in the back of my memory like old love letters. The conversation I had with my best friend Brenda 2 months ago, when her daughter-in-law left her with the grandkids for 3 weeks because she needed a break. "You know, I got the idea to play sick," Brenda had told me between nervous giggles as we drank chamomile tea in my living room. "I just complained about a little chest pain and bam! The whole family came running to see what was wrong. My son even took days off work to take care of me. At the time, it had seemed like an innocent prank, the whim of an old woman wanting a little attention. But now, with my heart in pieces and my dignity on the floor, those words came back to me like a prophecy. What if I got sick too? What if Lucas suddenly had to leave his fancy dinners to come take care of me? Would he then remember that I'm his mother, that I gave him life, that I dedicated every day of my existence to making sure he was happy? The idea began to take shape in my mind like a ball of dough rising slowly in the dark. Not something dramatic, not something that would scare them too much, just something that would make me a priority again, even for a short time. I got up from the chair and walked to the hallway mirror, the same one where I had watched myself slowly disappear over these 3 years of neglect. My reflection showed a tired woman, with messy gray hair and eyes swollen from the tears I had cried in silence for so many nights. "What have I become?" I asked the mirror. "When did I allow them to treat me like a nuisance?" I closed my eyes and imagined the scene. Lucas getting a call from the hospital, rushing over with Jessica and the kids, all worried, all wondering how they could have been so busy as to not notice I was feeling unwell. Guilt. That's what I needed them to feel. A little bit of guilt to remind them that mothers are human too, that we also get sick, that we also need to be cared for. That afternoon, while I watered the garden plants that no one else noticed anymore, I perfected my plan. It had to be believable, but not too serious. Something that required constant care, but wouldn't scare them enough to take me to a real hospital where they would discover my lie. I remembered my Aunt Rose, who had a minor stroke 5 years ago. They had hospitalized her at first, but then the doctors said she could recover at home with special care. She couldn't walk well, needed help bathing, dressing, eating, Her family had organized shifts to take care of her. Even her grandchildren visited her more often, brought her flowers, read the newspaper to her out loud. A minor stroke. I could fake that. Something that would affect my legs but not my mind, so I could consciously enjoy the attention I had missed so much. Guilt gnawed at me as I thought about this. What kind of mother plots to deceive her own son? What kind of woman fakes an illness to get love? But desperation is like hunger. When you have enough of it, you're capable of eating anything, no matter how bitter it tastes. That night, I called my friend Brenda. "Hey, Brenda, remember when you pretended to be sick to get your family's attention?" "Oh, Eleanor! Don't tell me you're thinking of pulling that stunt too." "It's not a stunt, Brenda. It's survival." I told her everything. The forgotten jars of peaches, the curt phone calls, the feeling of becoming invisible. Brenda listened in silence, and when I finished, she sighed deeply. "You know what the worst part of all this is, honey? It would never occur to us to do this to our own mothers, because we raised our sons to respect us, but they raised their children to respect only them." Her words hurt, because they were true. I had taught Lucas to be a good son, but he hadn't taught his children to be good grandchildren. He had broken the chain of respect that is passed down from generation to generation. "How are you going to do it?" Brenda asked. "I don't know yet, but it has to be soon, before I become completely invisible." I hung up the phone with my heart racing. There was no turning back. The decision was made. I just had to find the perfect moment and the right way to do it. 2 days later, as I was sweeping the back patio where Henry used to read his newspaper, the perfect opportunity occurred to me. Lucas had mentioned in his last call that he had an important meeting on Friday morning, a presentation he had been preparing for weeks to land a big contract. If I had my accident on Thursday night, he would have to choose between his meeting and his sick mother. And as selfish as he had become, I knew he couldn't abandon his mother in the hospital, not without looking like the worst son in the world in front of his own children. That night, lying in bed, I practiced my performance. How to fall without really hurting myself. What symptoms to fake. How to make my voice sound weak but not alarming. It had to be perfect. There could be no mistakes. "Forgive me, Henry," I whispered to the photograph of my husband I keep on the nightstand. "Forgive me for what I'm about to do, but I don't know any other way to get my son back." The photograph returned his smile, frozen in time, the smile that had once made me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. Now it seemed as if even he was judging me from the great beyond. I got out of bed and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I walked through the silent house, where every corner held memories of a family that no longer existed, I realized this wasn't just about winning back Lucas's love. It was about reclaiming my own dignity. It was about proving to myself that I still mattered, that I still had value, that I still deserved to be treated with respect. Thursday arrived faster than I expected. All day I felt butterflies in my stomach, like when I was a girl and had to take an important exam at school. I cleaned the house from top to bottom as if I were expecting important visitors. I made a chicken soup that I stored in the fridge, thinking it would be the first thing they'd ask for when I was recovering. At 8 o'clock at night, I put on my prettiest nightgown, the one with blue flowers that Henry had given me on our last anniversary. If I was going to be found on the floor, at least I wanted to look dignified. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and let my body fall onto the cold hallway tiles, careful not to hit my head, but hard enough for it to sound convincing. The pain of the impact was real. So was the fear. But what hurt the most was realizing I had sunk this low, that a 64-year-old woman who had given her entire life for her family now had to pretend to be dying to get a little attention. I lay there, on the cold floor of my own house, waiting for the moment to call Lucas and utter the words that would change everything. "Son, I fell. I don't think I can move. I need you to come." It took me 20 minutes to work up the courage to make the call. 20 minutes in which I practiced my trembling voice, in which I convinced myself that this wasn't just a lie, but a last chance to save what was left of our relationship. 20 minutes in which I told myself that if Lucas truly loved me, he would rush to help me without a second thought. With trembling hands, I dialed his number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. For a moment, I feared he wouldn't answer, like so many other times. Hello? Mom? What's wrong? It's almost 9 o'clock. His voice sounded annoyed, as if I had interrupted something important. I could hear the TV in the background and Jessica laughing with someone else. Lucas? Son? I fell. My voice came out more broken than I had practiced because the pain I felt was real. I can't move from the waist down. I'm on the floor in the hallway. The silence that followed lasted an eternity. I heard him turn down the volume on the TV. What do you mean you can't move? Does anything hurt? Are you bleeding? I'm not bleeding, but... Lucas, I'm scared. My legs feel like they're made of cotton. I don't know what happened. Okay. Don't move. I'm on my way right now. Can you reach a pillow or something to make yourself comfortable? For the first time in years, there was genuine concern in his voice. It wasn't the bored tone he usually spoke to me with. It was the tone of a son scared for his mother. Yes, I think so. I lied. I didn't want to move too much and ruin my performance. Don't hang up, Mom. I'm in the car, but don't hang up. Talk to me, okay? As Lucas drove to my house, he talked to me like he hadn't in years. He asked me what I had for dinner, if I had taken my blood pressure pills, if I had had any strange symptoms during the day. His voice sounded like it did when he was a boy and had nightmares, when he really needed me. I'm here, Mom. I'm coming in. I heard his hurried footsteps at the entrance, then his voice shouting my name through the house until he found me lying in the hallway. Mom! Oh my God! He knelt beside me, and for the first time in I don't know how long, I felt his hands touching me with tenderness. He stroked my forehead, checked my eyes with his phone's flashlight, tried to lift my legs carefully. Can you feel this? He asked, touching my feet. Just a little, I whispered, though I could perfectly feel his fingers. We're going to the hospital right now. No, son, I don't want to go to the hospital. Please. You know how they are, they'll keep me there for hours just to tell me nothing's wrong. Mom, this is serious. If you can't feel your legs, just help me get to my bed. We'll go to the doctor tomorrow, okay? But today, just stay with me, please. I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a boy. A real fear of losing me. Okay, he finally said. But if you're not better by morning, we're going straight to the hospital. He carried me to my bedroom with a gentleness I had forgotten he possessed. For a moment, as his arms held me, I felt like I did when he was little, and I would carry him when he hurt himself playing in the park. Once in bed, Lucas sat in the chair by my dresser and called Jessica. Honey, my mom fell and she can't move her legs. No, we don't know what happened. Yes, I'm going to stay here tonight. Tomorrow? I don't know, it depends on how she is in the morning. I could hear Jessica's sharp voice on the other end, though I couldn't make out what she was saying. But from Lucas's tone, it seemed she wasn't too happy about him staying. Jessica, it's my mom. She's sick. I can't leave her alone. Yes, I know I have the meeting tomorrow, but this is more important. Okay, we'll talk tomorrow. He hung up with a sigh and turned back to me. Do you need anything, Mom? Water? A pill? Just for you to stay here, I said. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't a lie. That night, Lucas slept on the armchair in my bedroom. Every time I made the slightest noise, he would wake up to ask if I was okay. He brought me chamomile tea, adjusted my pillows, even softly sang a song I used to sing to him as a child. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. But now he was singing it to me in his deep, tired voice. And for a moment, just for a moment, I felt like I had my son back. The next morning, when I tried to get up and pretended my legs wouldn't respond, Lucas went into a full-blown panic. It's getting worse. We're going to the hospital now. Wait, son. Better call Dr. Evans. He's known me for years. Have him come see me here. Dr. Evans had been our family doctor for decades. He was an older man, one of those old-fashioned doctors who still made house calls for familiar patients. I knew he might recommend bed rest at home if the symptoms weren't alarming. When he arrived, he examined me with the thoroughness of someone who had seen everything. I faked the symptoms I had studied. Numbness in my legs, slight dizziness, a little confusion. It could be a minor cerebrovascular event, the doctor told Lucas, using those technical words that sound terrible but aren't quite as bad. At her age, these episodes are common. The important thing is absolute rest and constant observation. Is she going to recover? Lucas asked in a voice I hadn't heard since he was a teenager and worried about everything. With proper care and rest, it's very likely. But she's going to need help for the next few weeks. She can't be left alone. I saw Lucas bite his lip, mentally calculating what this meant for his job, his life, his plans. "I'll take care of it," he said finally. "I can work from here a few hours and get someone to help the rest of the time." My heart nearly leaped with joy, but I maintained my worried expression. That afternoon, Lucas called his work to postpone the important meeting. I heard him explain to his boss that his mother had a health problem and he needed to be with her. "Yes, sir, I understand it's important, but it's my mom." "Yes, we can do it next week. Thank you so much for understanding." When he hung up, he looked stressed, but determined. "You know what, Mom? I haven't spent this much time with you in a long time. Maybe this thing that happened, maybe it's a chance for us to be closer." His words filled my heart with a guilty but real happiness. It had worked. My desperate plan had worked. But then Jessica arrived. She entered the house like a hurricane of expensive perfume and poorly disguised annoyance. She was wearing a pristine white dress and high heels that clicked like gunshots on my ceramic tiles. "How is Mrs. Miller?" she asked in that syrupy voice she used when there were guests, but I could see the irritation in her eyes. "She's fragile," Lucas answered. "The doctor says she needs constant care." "And for how long?" The question came out more directly than she had planned. "We don't know. It could be weeks, maybe months." I saw Jessica's hands clench into fists. She approached my bed with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Miller, what if we find a nurse? A professional who knows how to take care of you? Lucas has so much work and—" "No," I interrupted, making my voice as weak as possible. "I want my son. I only trust him." The look on Jessica's face was priceless. But Lucas, my Lucas, took my hand and said, "Don't worry, Mom. I'm going to take care of you." That's what I'm here for. For the first time in years, someone had chosen me over everything else. And even though it was based on a lie, it felt like the purest love I had received since Henry's death. That night, as Lucas prepared my dinner and Jessica made furious phone calls on the patio, I allowed myself a small victory. Maybe I had to hit rock bottom to find a ladder, but I had finally started to climb. I didn't know how long this charade would last, or how I would end it without looking like the worst mother in the world. But for now, for these days stolen from fate, I had my son back. And that, for the moment, was enough. The following days were the strangest, and at the same time, the happiest I had lived since Henry's death. Lucas settled into my house as if it were his own again. He brought a suitcase with a week's worth of clothes, his laptop to work from my living room, and even his morning vitamins that he had been taking religiously since he turned 40. In the mornings, he would make me breakfast with a dedication that reminded me of when I used to pack his lunches for elementary school: scrambled eggs with ham, toast cut into triangles just like he liked as a child, coffee with the perfect amount of sugar. He would sit on the edge of my bed and feed me as if I were a little girl, with that infinite patience that only sons have when they truly fear losing their mothers. "Is the coffee too hot, Mom? Should I add more milk?" "It's perfect, honey," I would reply, savoring not just the coffee but every affectionate word I hadn't heard from his lips in years. The afternoons became our sacred time. Lucas would bring out his guitar, the same one I had bought him by selling my engagement ring, and play the songs he used to practice as a teenager. His fingers moved over the strings with the same skill as always, but now there was a melancholy in his music that hadn't been there before. "Remember this song, Mom?" he asked one afternoon, playing the first chords of Hallelujah. "You said it was your favorite." "It's still my favorite," I whispered, feeling my eyes well up with tears. Not because of the song, but because I was reclaiming these moments I thought were gone forever. But where I truly got my son back was at night. When the house fell silent and the only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock Henry had brought from his parents' home, Lucas would sit in the chair by my bed, and we would talk like we hadn't in years. He told me about his fears at work, how fierce the competition was, and how he always felt he had to prove he deserved his position. He spoke of his doubts as a father, whether he was being too demanding with Daniel and Sophia, or if, on the contrary, he was spoiling them as Jessica always claimed. Sometimes I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, Mom. As a father, as a husband, as a son. His voice broke a little on the last word. I feel like I've failed you a lot these past few years. You haven't failed me, son, I lied, because at that moment, all that mattered was comforting him. You just got a little lost along the way, but you're here now. It's just that life gets so fast, you know? Between work, the kids, the bills, Jessica's social commitments. Sometimes I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel, running and getting nowhere. It was the first time Lucas had spoken to me about his marriage with something resembling sincerity. They had always been so careful to show only the perfect side of their relationship, as if admitting they had problems was a moral failure. Are you happy, son? I asked one night, when his defenses were particularly low. He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. I don't know if I know what happy means, he said finally. I know what it means to be busy, to be stressed, to be worried. But happy? It's been a long time since I've asked myself that question. Those nightly conversations became my drug. I finally had back the sensitive, reflective Lucas I had raised, not the cold, calculating man he had become. My plan was working better than I had ever dreamed. But Jessica didn't stand idly by. At first, it was subtle. She would come to the house with that fake smile and ask how I was feeling, but her eyes were constantly searching for signs of improvement. She studied me when she thought I wasn't looking, as if she could decipher my performance. Can you move your toes a little bit now, Eleanor? She would ask in that honeyed voice while checking my pedicure, which Lucas had made sure was impeccable. Just a tiny bit, I would reply, wiggling one toe just enough to make her think I was progressing slowly. That's great. It means you're recovering. Maybe you won't need so much care soon. But as the days went by, her patience wore thin. She started bringing the kids, hoping the presence of Daniel and Sophia would make me feel guilty for stealing their father. The kids miss their dad so much, she'd say while Daniel and Sophia played in the yard. They ask why he doesn't come home for dinner anymore, why he doesn't help them with their homework. The truth is, the kids adapted very well. In fact, they seemed to enjoy visiting their sick grandmother's house. Daniel had discovered my old adventure books in Henry's study and would spend afternoons reading to me out loud. Sophia had found my collection of rag dolls that I kept in the closet and would invent plays that she performed for me from the foot of my bed. "Grandma, did you like how I played the princess?" Sophia would ask after each performance, her eyes shining with pride. "You were the best princess I've ever seen," I would reply sincerely, because it had been years since I had seen my grandchildren so creative and free, without the military-style schedule of classes and extracurricular activities Jessica had imposed on them. But Jessica interpreted this closeness as just another one of my manipulations. She's using the kids to blackmail Lucas, I heard her say to someone on the phone while she was on the porch. She's taking advantage of the fact that he's too noble to abandon a sick mother. One afternoon, when Lucas had gone to the pharmacy for my fake medications, Jessica entered my bedroom with a determination I had never seen in her before. "Eleanor, we need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. She sat in the chair where Lucas spent his nights and stared at me, as if she could read my thoughts. "I know what you're doing," she said in a calm but ice-cold voice. I felt my blood run cold, but I maintained my expression of confusion. "I don't know what you're talking about, dear." "Of course you do. You're faking being sick so Lucas will pay attention to you, to get back the attention you lost when we started our own family." "Jessica, how can you think that? I'm sick. The doctor confirmed it. Dr. Evans is 80 years old and hasn't updated his medical knowledge since the 90s. Any younger doctor would have sent you for more specific tests." She moved closer to my bed, and I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with something that seemed like pure venom. "But you know what? I don't care if you're faking. What I won't allow is for you to destroy my marriage with your desperate need for attention. I'm not destroying anything. Lucas lost the biggest contract of his career because of you. Did you know that? The meeting he canceled was to finalize the construction of a shopping mall. 3 years of work down the drain because you decided it was more important for him to be your personal nurse." Those words hit me like slaps. I didn't know the meeting was that important. Lucas had never told me he had lost anything by taking care of me. "And that's not all," Jessica continued, seeing she had hit her mark. His company is considering letting him go because they can't trust him with important projects anymore. They say his family problems have made him unreliable. I didn't know, I stammered, feeling my small victory crumble. Of course you didn't know. Because Lucas is incapable of making you see the consequences of your whims. But I'm not so condescending. She stood up and smoothed her skirt with precise movements. You have 1 week to have a miraculous recovery, Eleanor. 1 week for Lucas to go back to his normal life and salvage what's left of his career. Because if you don't, I will personally bring a real neurologist here to examine you. And when he finds out there's nothing wrong with you, Lucas will realize what kind of mother he really has. She left my room, leaving behind only the echo of her heels and the crushing weight of guilt. That night, when Lucas arrived with the medications and sat down as usual to tell me about his day, I couldn't look him in the eye. For the first time since I had started this charade, I realized there was something worse than being ignored by my son, being the cause of his ruin. Is everything okay at work, honey? I asked with a trembling voice. Yes, Mom, don't worry. Everything is fine. He lied to me with the same ease I had lied to him about my illness. And there, in that mutual lie told for love, I understood that I had gone too far. That the price of getting my son back might be destroying him. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Lucas slept in his chair, breathing with that steady rhythm he'd had since he was a child when he was deeply tired. Every time I saw him stir, I noticed the dark circles under his eyes, how he had lost weight in the weeks he'd been caring for me, the way his shoulders remained tense even in his sleep. What had I done? What had I become? The next few days were a silent torture. Every gesture of love from Lucas felt like a knife in my chest. When he made me breakfast, singing softly, when he fluffed my pillows with that infinite tenderness, when he told me stories from his childhood to make me laugh, all I could think about were Jessica's words. He lost the biggest contract of his career because of you. On Wednesday morning, while Lucas was on a video conference from the living room, I heard him apologizing to someone. Yes, sir. I understand the company is concerned about the situation. No, my mother still can't be left alone. Yes, of course I understand the plaza project was important. He paused for a long time, and I could hear the scolding tone of the voice on the other end of the line. I assure you this won't affect my work performance. Yes, sir, I'm fully committed to the company. No, I don't have a specific date, but I'm looking for alternatives. When he hung up, I heard him sigh deeply and walk toward the kitchen. From my bed, I could see him through the half-open door, standing at the sink, his hands gripping the edge, his head bowed, his shoulders were trembling slightly. My son was crying, because of me. That afternoon, when Jessica arrived with the children, I noticed something different in her demeanor. There was no longer even a pretense of courtesy. She came straight into my room while Daniel and Sophia played with Lucas in the yard. 3 days left, she said without preamble, checking her wristwatch as if it were a time bomb. 3 days until your son completely loses his job. Jessica, please. Please what? Please let you destroy my family? Please allow my children to see their father become a failure because his grandmother is a manipulator. Her words were like lashes, but the worst part was that she was right. Lucas couldn't sleep last night, she continued, moving closer to my bed. He was up until 5 in the morning looking for jobs online. Jobs that pay half of what he earns now, because no one is going to trust someone who abandons major projects for family problems. She sat on the edge of my bed, invading my personal space with a familiarity that felt threatening. Do you know how much we pay for the kids' tuition each month? Do you know how much the mortgage on the house is? Do you have any idea what it costs to maintain the standard of living we've built over the years? No, I didn't know. I had never been included in those financial conversations. To me, Lucas had always been prosperous, successful, stable. $3,000 a month just for tuition. $4,000 for the mortgage. Not counting gas, food, utilities, the kids' swimming lessons, my gym, insurance. Each figure was like a slap in the face. If Lucas loses this job, we'll have to switch the kids to a different school, sell the house, start from scratch. I didn't know, I murmured, feeling smaller with every word. Of course you didn't know. Because you only think about yourself, your needs, your loneliness. your desire for attention, but you never asked what it costs others to satisfy your whims. She stood up and went to the window, looking out at the yard where Lucas was teaching Daniel a few chords on the guitar. You see that? I would love for Lucas to be that patient and affectionate at home, for him to dedicate that attention to his own children instead of being here playing the perfect son to a mother who is faking an illness. I'm not faking. Enough. Her voice came out louder than she'd intended. She immediately covered her mouth and glanced toward the yard to make sure Lucas hadn't heard. Enough, she repeated in a low voice, but with an intensity that chilled my blood. Stop lying to me. Stop lying to yourself. And above all, stop lying to Lucas. She approached my bed again and leaned in until her face was inches from mine. If you don't end this farce in the next 3 days, I will end it for you. And believe me, Eleanor, when Lucas finds out you've been faking all this time, when he realizes he's sacrificed his career for a lie, he will never speak to you again. Her eyes glittered with a mixture of fury and determination I had never seen in her. And neither will the children, because I will make sure they know exactly what kind of grandmother they have. One who is capable of destroying her own family just to get attention. She straightened up and smoothed her blouse, regaining the elegant composure that characterized her. 3 days, Eleanor. Use that time to decide if you want to end this with some dignity, or if you'd rather I unmask you in front of everyone. She left my room, leaving behind only the echo of her words and the unbearable weight of the truth. That night, as Lucas gave me dinner and told me about the kids' antics in the yard, I couldn't stop looking at him. He really did look tired. His hands, which used to be soft because he worked in an office, now had small cuts and scrapes from taking care of me, from washing dishes, from doing chores he wasn't used to. When was the last time he had gone out with his friends? When had he done something for pure pleasure, not out of obligation to me? Son, I said when I finished eating, why don't you go out tonight? Go have dinner with Jessica, just the two of you. I'll be fine. No, Mom, I can't leave you alone. What if you need something? What if you feel sick? Nothing is going to happen in a few hours. Besides, your wife needs time with you. She looks stressed. Lucas sighed and sat in his usual chair. It's just that things are really complicated at work, Mom. And Jessica doesn't understand that I can't leave you alone while you're like this. How complicated? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It's nothing you need to worry about, he said with that fake smile he had inherited from his father. It's just work stuff. It will get sorted out. But I knew it wouldn't be sorted out. I knew that every day he spent here with me, he was sinking deeper into a hole he might never climb out of. Lucas, I said, taking his hand, are you happy taking care of me? The question took him by surprise. He was quiet for a few seconds, and in those seconds, I could see the truth in his eyes. Of course I am, Mom. You're my mother. It's the least I can do after everything you did for me. Obligation, guilt, duty. That's what I heard in his voice. Not genuine love, but the crushing weight of the emotional debt I had built over years. And if I wasn't sick? I pressed. If you could choose freely, would you spend this much time with me? Lucas shifted uncomfortably in his chair. That's a strange question, Mom, but of course I like spending time with you. Another lie, as transparent as my own. That night, after Lucas had fallen asleep in his chair, I got up silently. My legs worked perfectly, as they had all these days. I walked to the window and looked out at the empty street, barely illuminated by the municipal streetlights that had needed maintenance for years. In the house across the street, Mrs. Gable had her kitchen light on, probably preparing tomorrow's breakfast, or maybe baking something nice for when her daughter came to visit. A genuine visit, wanted, awaited with joy and not with the weary resignation I saw in Lucas's eyes. I realized that I had been so focused on getting my son's love back that I hadn't considered if he actually wanted to give it. I had mistaken obligation for affection, guilt for devotion, pity for respect. I returned to my bed before Lucas woke up, but I already knew what I had to do. I knew that love cannot be stolen, cannot be blackmailed, cannot be faked. And if my son had to choose between his mother and his future, I had to be brave enough not to force him to choose. But first, I had to find a way to end this without losing him forever. I had to find a way to save Lucas from my own desperation. The next day, I decided it was time to begin my miraculous recovery. At breakfast, I moved my toes more noticeably, pretended I could hold my coffee cup more steadily, and even managed to sit up a little straighter in bed. "Mom, did you see that? You moved your whole leg!" Lucas exclaimed with a genuine joy that broke my heart. "I think I'm feeling a little better, honey," I lied, hating myself for continuing the deceit, but knowing it was the only way to release him gradually. "This is wonderful. I'm going to call Dr. Evans to check on you." "No, there's no need. I'd rather it be natural, without any pressure." That afternoon, while Lucas was out buying medicine, the phone rang. It was a voice I didn't recognize, an older woman with a professional tone. "Am I speaking with Mrs. Eleanor Miller?" "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Ms. Morales, from the law firm of Evans and Associates. I need to deliver some very important documents left by your late husband, Henry Miller. Could I see you tomorrow morning?" I froze. Henry had been dead for 3 years. What documents could have been pending all this time? "What kind of documents are you talking about?" "I would prefer to explain in person, ma'am. These are sensitive matters that require your signature and presence. Would you be available tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I'm a little unwell. Could you possibly come here?" "Of course. I have your address in the file." When I hung up, I had a strange feeling. Henry had always been very meticulous with legal papers. It wasn't like him to leave matters unresolved, especially for 3 years. That night, I couldn't concentrate on my conversation with Lucas. My mind was spinning, trying to imagine what Henry could have left unfinished. A debt? An insurance policy? Some kind of legal trouble? The next morning, Ms. Morales turned out to be a woman in her 60s, with perfectly coiffed gray hair and a worn but elegant leather briefcase. She wore a navy blue pantsuit and had reading glasses hanging from a gold chain. "Mrs. Miller," she said after the polite greetings, sitting in the chair Lucas had vacated to go to work for half the day. "What I have come to deliver today is something your husband left with very specific instructions." She took a manila folder and a sealed envelope with a red wax seal from her briefcase. "Mr. Miller asked me to deliver this to you only under one very particular condition," she continued, adjusting her glasses. "Only if I ever perceived that you were completely alone, without the support of your family." The words hit me like a lightning bolt. Had Henry foreseen this could happen? Had he known Lucas might abandon me? "I don't understand. Your husband came to see me 2 months before he passed away," the lawyer explained, opening the folder. "He told me, and I quote, 'If my Eleanor ever finds herself alone, if my son doesn't care for her as he should, if no one values her as she deserves, I want you to give her this, which I have been saving for her.'" She held the envelope out to me with a steady hand. "How did he know that I was alone?" I asked. "I have been discreetly monitoring your situation for these past 3 years, ma'am. Your husband paid me to do so. When I learned you'd had an accident and that your son was finally taking care of you, I thought it would no longer be necessary to deliver this. But yesterday, I received a call. A call from whom? From Mrs. Jessica Miller, your daughter-in-law. She told me about certain circumstances and asked me to come see you urgently." I felt the hair on my arms stand up. Jessica had called a lawyer I didn't even know existed. "What exactly did she tell you?" The lawyer cleared her throat, obviously uncomfortable. "She told me that you were faking an illness to manipulate your son, that you had destroyed his career with your lies, and that if I didn't intervene, she was going to publicly report you for medical fraud." My world came crashing down. Jessica not only knew the truth, but she had found a way to completely ruin me. She had dug into my past until she found connections I didn't even remember. "But do you know what struck me as odd, Mrs. Miller?" the lawyer continued. "That a daughter-in-law would go to such trouble to investigate her mother-in-law's life. It made me suspect that Mrs. Miller's motivations might not be as altruistic as she wanted me to believe." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter written in Henry's familiar script, and several documents I didn't understand. "My dearest Eleanor," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means something went wrong with our plan for your future. If you are alone, if you feel abandoned, if our son is not caring for you as he promised, then it's time for you to know what I truly left for you." Tears began to fall on the paper as I read on. For years, I worked in secret, saving money that Lucas never knew existed. Not in American accounts, where he might find it and spend it prematurely, but in a Swiss account that only you can access. It's $5.8 million, my love. Money I earned from investments I made since we were married, always thinking of your old age, your peace of mind, your independence. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Henry, who had always been careful with money, but never ostentatious, had been a secret millionaire. If Lucas is caring for you as he should, if he respects and loves you as you deserve, then keep this and use it only if you ever need it. But if he has abandoned you, if he treats you like a burden, then use this money to start a new life where you will be valued and respected. The lawyer handed me the remaining documents. Here is all the paperwork to access the account, ma'am. Your husband was very forward-thinking. He also left instructions that, should you decide to use this money, I am to assist you with all the necessary legal arrangements. I sat in silence, processing this impossible information. Henry had left me a fortune, but more than that, he had left me a choice, an escape. There is one more thing, the lawyer added, lowering her voice. Your husband also left me very detailed information about your son's finances. Apparently, Lucas has been lying about his economic situation. What do you mean? Your son is not in a financial crisis, Mrs. Miller. In fact, he's in a very solid financial position. The company is not going to fire him, nor did he lose any important contract. All of that are lies they have told you to make you feel guilty. The world started to spin around me. Had it all been a lie? The crisis? Jessica's threats? The emotional blackmail? How can you be sure? Your husband left me contacts at the company where Lucas works. I have been monitoring his employment situation for these 3 years. Lucas is being considered for a major promotion, not a dismissal. And the meeting he supposedly missed to care for you was postponed by a company-wide decision, not canceled. I felt a mixture of relief and betrayal that churned in my stomach. Lucas hadn't lost anything by taking care of me, but he had allowed me to believe he had. He had allowed me to feel guilty for ruining his life. So Jessica, Mrs. Miller deliberately lied to you to manipulate you psychologically. Apparently, she knew you were faking the illness and decided to use that against you to separate you from your son for good. The lawyer closed her briefcase and stood up. Mrs. Miller, my professional advice is that you think very carefully about what you want to do with this information. You have the resources to be completely independent if you so choose. But you also have the opportunity to use what you now know to make more informed decisions about your relationship with your family. After she left, I remained alone with the envelope in my hands, staring at those impossible numbers on the bank statements. $5.8 million. Enough to buy a new house, travel the world, live the rest of my life with dignity and independence. But more important than the money was the truth. Lucas wasn't in crisis, and I hadn't ruined anything. It had all been a manipulation by Jessica to push me away from my son for good. The problem was, I was still lying about my illness. And now I had to decide what to do with all these tangled truths and lies that had created an impossible knot to unravel. When Lucas came home that afternoon, he found me sitting on the edge of the bed, apparently recovering more quickly. "Mom, you can sit up by yourself? This is incredible." I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of the lie he had told me about his job, any hint that he too had been acting all this time. "Lucas," I said, "we need to talk." I saw him tense up immediately. He sat in his usual chair, but this time he kept his distance, as if he could sense that something had changed. "Are you okay, Mom? You look different." "I'm fine, son. In fact, I feel better than I have in years." It was true, though not for the reasons he thought. "That's wonderful. Dr. Evans was right. You just needed time and care." I stared at him, studying every feature of his face. How could I have been deceived for so long? How had I not realized my own son was capable of lying to me so easily? "Lucas, how is your job, really?" The question caught him off guard. I saw his eyes dart to the window, to his hands, anywhere but to me. "I told you, Mom. It's complicated, but nothing you need to worry about." "Did you really lose that contract because you were taking care of me?" This time the pause was longer. I saw him bite his lower lip, a nervous tic he'd had since he was a boy when he was lying. "Mom, why are you asking me this?" "Because I need to know the truth, son. The whole truth." He stood up and began pacing the room, hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the floor. "All right," he said finally. "I didn't lose the contract. It was postponed, that's all. But that doesn't mean there weren't consequences for missing so much work." "What consequences, Lucas?" "Well, the company noticed my absence, obviously, and that could affect my future performance reviews." More lies, but softer, watered down, as if he was the one who needed to protect me from reality instead of the other way around. "And did your boss really chew you out on the phone yesterday?" "Yeah. Well, it wasn't exactly a chewing out. It was more like a conversation about responsibilities." I stood up from the bed, completely, without help, without faking any weakness in my legs. Lucas froze. "Mom, what are you doing? You shouldn't—" "I can walk perfectly, son," I said, taking a few steps toward him. "I've been able to walk this whole time." The color drained from his face. He stood motionless, processing what he had just seen and heard. What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've been faking, Lucas. That I was never sick. That this was all a lie to get your attention back." He sat down heavily in the chair, as if his own legs had given out. "I don't understand." "Of course you understand. Because you've been lying too. About your job. About the consequences. About everything." "Mom, And Jessica has been lying. About the financial crisis. About you getting fired. About everything." Lucas covered his face with his hands. "How do you know all this?" I told him about Ms. Morales' visit. About his father's documents. About the money we never knew existed. With every word, I watched the facade we had all built, each for our own reasons, crumble away. "So Dad knew," he murmured. "Your father knew that one day you might abandon me, and he left me a way out." Lucas looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I never abandoned you. I just lost my way." "I know, son. I got lost too. We both did." We were silent for several minutes. A silence different from any we had shared before. It wasn't the silence of abandonment or guilt. It was the silence of two people finally seeing each other clearly. "Can you forgive me?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Can you forgive me?" We both started crying at the same time, but they weren't tears of sadness, but of release. Like when it rains after months of drought and the earth can finally breathe. Lucas came over and hugged me, but this time it wasn't the compassionate hug of a son caring for his sick mother. It was the real embrace of two adults who had found each other again after being lost in a labyrinth of lies and expectations. "What do we do now?" he asked. "Now, we're going to be honest. For the first time in years." That afternoon, when Jessica arrived with the kids, the three of us were waiting for her in the living room. Lucas, me, and Ms. Morales, who had returned at my request. "What's going on here?" Jessica asked, taking in the scene. "Sit down, Jessica," Lucas said, in a voice that brooked no argument. Ms. Morales opened her briefcase and took out several documents. "Mrs. Miller, yesterday you called me to report your mother-in-law for faking an illness." Jessica looked at Lucas for support, but he kept his gaze fixed on his own hands. "You were right," the lawyer continued. "Mrs. Miller was indeed faking. But what you didn't know is that I had specific orders from your late father-in-law to monitor for exactly this type of situation." She handed Jessica a copy of the bank statements. "It turns out Mr. Miller left very clear instructions on what to do if his wife was mistreated or manipulated by her family, including the lies you told her about your husband's employment situation." Jessica turned pale as she saw the figures on the papers. I didn't know?" "Of course you didn't know. Because you were so busy trying to push your mother-in-law away that you never bothered to find out if the lies you were telling her had any real basis." Lucas finally spoke. "Jessica, why did you lie to me about my job? Why did you tell my mom I had lost the contract?" "Because I wanted her to leave," Jessica answered with a brutal honesty that surprised us all. "Because I'm tired of your mother always being a priority in our lives. Because for once I want you to think about your wife and your children first." "But she was sick." "She wasn't sick. I knew it from the first day. A person can't fake paralysis that badly." Daniel and Sophia, who had been playing in the yard, came in at that moment and stood in the doorway. Sensing the tension, but not fully understanding what was happening. "What's going on?" Daniel asked with the intuition children have for detecting adult problems. It was Sophia who came over to me and took my hand. "Grandma, are you not sick anymore?" "No, sweetie. I was never really sick." "Then why couldn't you walk?" The innocent question from a 9-year-old girl summed up the whole complex situation better than any adult analysis could. "Because sometimes grown-ups do very silly things when they feel lonely," I answered with complete honesty. Daniel came over too. "Like when I pretend to be sick so I don't have to go to school?" "Exactly like that, but much more serious." The children processed this information with that ability they have to accept complicated truths better than adults. "Are you going to stop pretending to be sick?" Sophia asked. "Never again, I promise." "And are we still going to come visit you?" I looked at Lucas and Jessica before answering. "That's up to your mom and dad." Jessica stood up and headed for the door. "We're leaving." "Lucas, when you decide whether your loyalty is with your real family or with your manipulative mother, let me know." "Jessica, wait." Lucas stopped her. "We've all lied here. We've all manipulated. My mom faked being sick. You lied about my job. I lied about the consequences. Don't you think it's time we stop looking for someone to blame and start looking for solutions?" Jessica paused in the doorway, but didn't turn around. "The solution is simple, Lucas. Your mother has enough money to live independently for the rest of her life. Let her go live on her own and leave us in peace." "That's an option," I said, surprising everyone. "And maybe it's the best one." Lucas turned to me alarmed. "Mom, no, don't say that." "Son, your wife is right about one thing. I have been a burden to you. I've used guilt and manipulation to stay relevant in your lives. That isn't love, it's selfishness." I knelt down to Daniel and Sophia, who were still holding my hands. "But I want you to know that I love you more than words can say. And if I decide to go away, it's not because I don't love you, but precisely because I love you so much that I'd rather leave than continue to damage this family." The children hugged me, and in that embrace, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pure, unconditional love, without manipulation, without guilt. "Where are you going to go, Grandma?" Daniel asked. "I don't know yet, honey, but wherever I go, you will always have a grandmother who loves you." That night, after they left, Lucas and I sat on the porch, under the stars we hadn't seen together in years. "Are you really going to leave, Mom? I think it's for the best for everyone, but I don't want you to go. I want to learn how to be a better son. I want us to have a real relationship, not one based on obligation or guilt. And we will, Lucas, but from a distance, from a place of mutual respect, from the freedom to choose to be together because we want to, not because we need to." 6 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of my new home in Sarasota, Florida, watching the sunset over the Gulf, a small but beautiful house with a garden full of flowers and an ocean view, a house I bought with my own money, where no one visited me out of obligation. Lucas called me every Sunday, not because he had to, but because he genuinely wanted to know how I was. Jessica and I never became friends, but we learned to respect each other from a distance. The children came to visit me on their school breaks, and those visits were pure, filled with laughter and adventures on the beach. I had learned to live alone without feeling lonely. I had learned that love isn't begged for, it's offered freely. I had learned that sometimes letting go is the deepest form of loving. And for the first time in my life, at 65 years old, I was completely free to be who I truly was. Eleanor Miller, a woman who had chosen her own happiness over the approval of others. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love in order to truly love them? Tell me in the comments if you've been through something similar. And if this story touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach someone else who needs to hear it.